Hare Krishna. Welcome to my Radha Mother channel. This is Sindhu here. I'm happy to be associating with you all after a long gap. I know the last video, hope you all enjoyed as much as I did. How Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we saw in detail. And today's topic, as you can see in the image, why self-compassion trumps self-esteem. Basically, we are going to see what is self-compassion, self-esteem, and how can we increase or boost our self-confidence according to the Bhagavad Gita. That is what we are going to see, and we are going to see this article first before going into the introduction and prayer. Let me start with the introduction, small prayer. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurava Pracharini Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pascharya Deshatarini. Hare Krishna. See, like everyone, there are times you can lose confidence in yourself and slip into doubts, insecurity, uncertainty, lacking self-confidence. You may fear and suspect that you're weak or incompetent and thereby hesitate to speak or act with assertiveness, missing out on potential opportunities for growth or success. So this is definitely not a pleasing state to be in. So how can we maintain a healthy level of self-confidence or self-esteem in who we are and what we can do? So Bhagavad Gita is said to have all the answers for this. The timeless wisdom of Bhagavad Gita can help increase the self-confidence, like how Arjuna got it, solely from the instructions and lessons of self-confidence from Sri Krishna, right? And Sri Krishna has also given 5 lessons how to boost your very, very important 5 lessons, as a powerful tool to build up, to boost the self-confidence in all of us, right? And also, basically, see, there are 2 ways. That is what he stresses again and again. Number 1 is focus on the purpose meaningful to us, take tangible steps towards that thing. Or the second option is pat ourselves on a back, being self-pity, self-righteousness, and thereby wasting our life, or we can say something like that. So definitely we all know which is the better option. Number 1, focus on the purpose which is meaningful to us and take tangible steps to work towards that, right? So definitely it doesn't come by patting ourselves on the back, so we all know that. So think it over. Why patting ourselves on the back cannot lead to one day to self-esteem, and what will actually lead to the self-esteem, and what can we do to boost your self-esteem? Okay, these things you will be very clear once we complete this video, right? Hari bol. So let's start with this. The 5 lessons what Krishna says to Arjuna is first, lesson 1 is find your true self. Number 2, follow your purpose in life, or be true to your purpose in life. Lesson 3, take action. Lesson 4, build experience. And the final and last lesson, meditate. Right? So what Krishna is talking about, each one, just give you a small gist. Find your true self. It's obvious that, confidence is nothing but absence of doubts. Absence of doubts on yourself. So first what we need to know ourselves in the first place. So that is what is the first teaching of Krishna to Arjuna, that this material world you perceive, Arjuna, with your 5 senses is not the true reality which you are experiencing. It is just an illusion. So your ultimate essence ultimate thing is the soul, spirit soul. That is what Krishna is telling. Not to grieve for it or not to lament unnecessarily for that, right? Lesson 2, follow your purpose in life. So Krishna goes on to remind Arjuna to follow his dharma or purpose in life. So Arjuna's dharma is that of a warrior, a mighty warrior, all his life, So Krishna is guiding him. You have to be fearless. And lesson 3, take action. He says that he is in this world to take action and not get into self-doubt or worry or anxiety or overthinking, etc., etc. So this lesson, what does it teach? It teaches us not to sit on the sidelines of life and wonder, but to take selfless action and own the consequences, like Arjuna. And lesson 4, build experience. So when you follow step 3, you build up a surplus of experiences, your skills grow, and you become more capable. You automatically develop the understanding to navigate your activities with ease. And this is a fundamental principle to building self confidence with dedicated practice. As there is a saying, famous saying, repetition is the mother of all skills, no matter what the endeavor. If you want to get better and therefore more confident, keep practicing. Isn't it? So, and the last and final lesson is Krishna is teaching Arjuna the profound knowledge of yoga, that is meditation. So, through this practice, the voices of doubts, the indecision, the fears, the worries, everything, they all fade away and allow us to have direction. Allow us to have a direct experience of your soul, infinite, which is immortal, which is eternal, which is pure. You can keep talking about the qualities of the soul in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna has beautifully explained so many qualities, more than 20 qualities of the soul. Right? So, stepping into this field, what happens? It sets you free even from the need to seek approval from others. So, these are the 5 lessons, given by Krishna. What are the steps? I'll repeat. Find your true self, follow your purpose in life, take action, 4th, build experience, and 5th one, meditate. And now there is a verse on this boosting in the 18th chapter, 37th verse. Let's see what Krishna says here. Prabhupada has beautifully given a good purport on this also, explanation. Yattad agre visham eva pariname mritopamam tatshukam satvikam proktam atma buddhi prasadajam. Yattad agre visham eva pariname mritopamam tatsukam satvikam proktam atma buddhi prasadajam means that which in the beginning may be just like poison, but at the end is just like a nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization, is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. So what Prabhupada is telling, in the pursuit of self-realization, one has to follow many rules and regulations to control the mind and the senses, to concentrate the mind on the self. All these procedures are very difficult, bitter like poison, but if one is successful in following the regulations, it comes to the transcendental position, he begins to drink the real nectar and he enjoys life. That is such a beautiful, sweet verse. Right? And also, see, Krishna is the epitome of compassion himself. We are going to see in this article about self-compassion, how it, it defeats the self-esteem also. That's what this article is talking. So I would like to say that Shri Krishna is the epitome of compassion himself. Why? Because in this 4th chapter, there is again a famous verse which says that 4.7. Yeah. It says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam shrijamyaham. So what this means? So Shri Krishna comes for the protection of his devotees and establishment of dharma. Right? And predominant rise of irreligion at that time, I dissent myself, Krishna says. So what does that mean? So here Krishna is also called as Atmarama, which means that he is self-satisfied. Right? He doesn't need anyone or doesn't need anything to be happy. He is already self-satisfied. And his disposition towards his devotees, towards us, is of complete and full compassion. So he is always, anytime accessible to his sincere devotees. There's so many examples in the scriptures, we can keep talking, Mother Yashoda, Puchana, Sudama, Kubja, Arjuna, right? How he is formed a major role. How he has always been for them under all circumstances, right? So that we need to understand. And also this is a famous, easiest, what to say, Krishna's worship. Even the poorest of the poorest can worship Krishna. That is the greatness we all need to understand. There is a verse 9.6, I guess. Right? 9.26. If you see, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tad aham bhaktya uparhatam ashnami prayatatmanaha. So, patram pushpam phalam toyam. So, what is says, if he's any person who's even engaged in the loving service of the Lord, whatever he offers, even a small leaf, small flower, little water, is eternally happy. Such is the easiest of the process. No need for any other qualification. The only qualification which is required to do this process is to be the pure devotee of the Lord. That is all. You know, the genuine love, the Lord is very, very, very pleased to accept it. Right? So this process basically to be in Krishna consciousness is very, 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 it's very easy and universal. No one can be barred from coming into this. It's a simple method, which you can attain the highest perfection of life, of eternity, bliss and knowledge. So Krishna, what basically he wants only a loving service, nothing more. He accepts even a little flower from his devotee. He does not want any kind of offering from a non-devotee. He is not in need of anything from anyone, as I told you. He is self-sufficient and he accepts the offering of devotee in exchange of love and affection only. So that should be our goal and the highest perfection of life. Right? So that is what I want to stress here. So to conclude, before going into this article, so these 5 lessons, hope it provides you with the powerful tools to harness and innate the self-confidence that already lives within you. Of course, building the self-confidence in a day is a Herculean task. Like we saw how controlling the mind, it's very, very difficult in Arjuna's case. But how he did that, by how he succeeded, by following the formula given by Sri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, you can gain control over it and build confidence also. So one of the most important point we need to remember here is that, my dear friends and devotees, that all our activities should be done by keeping Sri Krishna at the center. Automatically all your activities become spiritual. It becomes a spiritual activity and Krishna is pleased by your endeavor and your life becomes meaningful and successful. Okay, Hari Bol. So let's see what the article is talking about now. Researcher Kristin Neff reveals the benefits of going easy on yourself. Less anxiety, less conflict and more peace of mind. In this incredibly competitive society of ours, how many of us truly feel good about ourselves? I remember once, as a freshman in college, after spending hours getting ready for a big party, I complained to my boyfriend that my hair, makeup and outfit were awfully inadequate. He tried to reassure me by saying, "Don't worry, you look fine." Fine? Oh great, I always wanted to look fine. The desire to feel special is understandable. The problem is that by definition it's impossible for everyone to be above average at the same time. Although there are some ways in which we excel, there is always someone smarter, prettier, more successful. How do we cope up with this? Not very well. To see ourselves positively, we need to inflate our own egos and put others down so that we can feel good in comparison, but this strategy comes at a price. It holds us back from reaching our full potential in life. How can we grow if we can't acknowledge our own weaknesses? We might temporarily feel better about ourselves by ignoring our flaws or by believing our issues and difficulties are somebody else's faults, but in the long run, we only harm ourselves by getting stuck in endless cycles of stagnation and conflict. Hari Bol. Continually feeding our need for positive self-evolution, a bit like stuffing ourselves with a candy. We get a brief sugar high, then a crash. And right after the crash comes a pendulum swing to despair as we realize however much we would like to, we can't always blame our problems on someone else. We can't always feel special and above average. The result is often devastating. Most of us are incredibly hard on ourselves when we finally admit some flaw or shortcoming. I'm not good enough, I'm worthless. And of course, the goal post for what counts as good enough seem always to remain out of reach. No matter how well we do, someone else always seems to be doing it better. The result of this line of thinking is sobering. Millions of people need to take pharmaceuticals every day just to cope with daily life. Insecurity, anxiety, and depression are incredibly common in our society, and much of this is due to self-judgment, to beating ourselves up when we feel we aren't winning in the game of life. Another way, so what's the answer? To stop judging and evaluating ourselves altogether? To stop trying to label ourselves as good or bad and simply accept ourselves with an open heart? To treat ourselves with the same kindness, caring and compassion we would show to a good friend or even a stranger for that matter? When I first came across the idea of self-compassion, it changed my life almost immediately. It was during my last year in the Human Development Doctoral Program at the University of California, Berkeley. As I was putting the finishing touches on my dissertation, I was going through a really difficult time following the breakup of my first marriage, and I was full of shame and self-loathing. I thought signing up for meditation classes at the local Buddhist center might help. As part of my exploration, I read Sharon Salzberg's classic book Loving Kindness and was never the same again. I had known that Buddhists talk a lot about the importance of compassion, but I have never considered that having compassion for yourself might be as important as having compassion for others. From the Buddhist point of view, you have to care about yourself before you can really care about other people. I remember talking to my new fiance, Rupert, who joined me for the weekly Buddhist group meetings, and shaking my head in amazement. You mean you're actually allowed to be nice to yourself, to have compassion for yourself when you mess up or are going through a really hard time? I don't know. I am too self compassionate. Won't I be lazy and selfish? It took me a while to get my head around it, but I slowly came to realize that self criticism, despite being socially sanctioned, was not at all helpful and in fact only made things worse. I wasn't making myself a better person by beating myself up all the time. Instead, I was causing myself to feel inadequate and insecure, then taking out my frustration on the people closest to me. More than that, I wasn't owing up to many things because I was so afraid of the self hate that would follow if I admitted the truth. After getting my PhD, I did 2 years of postdoctoral training with a leading self esteem researcher. I quickly learned that although thousands of articles had been written on the importance of self esteem, researchers were now starting to point out all the traps that people can fall into when they try to get and keep a sense of high self esteem: narcissism, self absorption, self righteous, anger, prejudice, discrimination, and so on. I realized that self compassion was a perfect alternative to the relentless pursuit of self esteem. Why? Because it offers the same protection against harsh self criticism as self esteem, but without the need to see ourselves as perfect or as better than others. In other words, self compassion provides the same benefits as high self esteem without its drawbacks. Although no one had yet defined self compassion from an academic perspective, let alone done any research on it, I knew that this would be my life's work. Over the past decade, research that my colleagues and I have conducted shows that self compassion is a powerful way to achieve emotional well being and contentment in our lives, helping us avoid destructive patterns of fear, negativity, and isolation. More so than self esteem, the nurturing quality of self compassion allows us to flourish, to appreciate the beauty and richness of life even in hard times. When we soothe our agitated minds with self compassion, we are better able to notice what's right as well and what's wrong, so that we can orient ourselves towards that which gives us joy. The science of self compassion. So, what is self compassion? What does it mean actually? As I have defined it, self compassion entails three core components. First, it requires self kindness, that we be gentle and understanding with ourselves rather than harshly critical and judgmental. Second, it requires recognition of our common humanity, feeling connected with others in the experience of life rather than feeling isolated, alienated by our suffering. Third, it requires mindfulness, that we hold our experience in balanced awareness rather than ignoring our pain, exaggerating it. We must achieve and combine these three elements in order to be truly self compassionate. This means that, unlike self esteem, the good feelings of self compassion do not depend on our being special and above average or meeting ideal goals. Instead, they come from caring about ourselves, fragile and imperfect, yet magnificent as we are. Rather than pitting ourselves against other people in an endless comparison game, we embrace what we share with others and feel more connected and whole in the process. And the good feelings of self compassion don't go away when we mess up or things go wrong. In fact, self compassion steps in precisely where self esteem lets us down, whenever we fail or feel inadequate. Sure, you skeptics may be saying to yourself, but what does the research show? The bottom line is that, according to the science, self compassion does in fact appear to offer the same advantages as high self esteem with no discernible downsides. The first thing to know is that self compassion and self esteem do tend to go together. If you are self compassionate, you will tend to have higher self esteem than if you are endlessly self critical. And like high self esteem, self compassion is associated with significantly less anxiety and depression, as well as more happiness, optimism, and positive emotions. However, self compassion offers clear advantages over self esteem when things go wrong or when our egos are threatened. In one study my colleagues and I conducted, for instance, undergraduate students were asked to fill out measures of self compassion and self esteem. Next came the hard part. They were asked to participate in a mock job interview to test their interviewing skills. A lot of undergrads are nervous about the interviewing process, especially given that they'll soon be applying for jobs in real life. As part of the experiment, students were asked to write an answer to the dreaded but inevitable interview question: please describe your greatest weaknesses. Afterward, they were asked to report how anxious they were feeling. Participants' self-compassion levels, but not their self-esteem level, predicted how much anxiety they felt. In other words, self-compassionate students reported feeling less conscious and nervous than those who lacked self-compassion, presumably because they felt okay admitting and talking about their weak points. Students with high self-esteem, by contrast, were no less anxious than those with low self-esteem, having been thrown off balance by the challenge of discussing their feelings. And interestingly, self-compassionate people used fewer first-person singular pronouns such as I when writing about their weaknesses, instead using the more first-person plural pronouns such as we. They also made references to friends, family, and other humans more often. This suggests that the sense of interconnectedness inherent to self compassion plays an important role in its ability to buffer against anxiety. Another study required people to imagine being in potentially embarrassing situations, being on a sports team and blowing a big game, for instance, or performing in a play and forgetting one's lines. How would participants feel if something like this happened to them? Self compassionate participants were less likely to feel humiliated or incompetent or to take it too personally. Instead, they said they would take things in stride, thinking thoughts like everybody goofs up now, and then in the long run, it doesn't really matter. Having high self esteem, however, made little difference. Those with those high and low self esteem were equally likely to have thoughts thoughts like I am such a loser or I wish I could die. Once again, high self-esteem tends to come up empty-handed when the chips are down. In a different study, participants were asked to make a videotape that would introduce and describe themselves. They were then told that someone would watch the tape and give them feedback in terms of how warm, friendly, intelligent, likable, and mature they appear. The feedback was bogus, of course. Half the participants received positive feedback, other half neutral feedback. Self-compassionate people were relatively unflustered, regardless of whether the feedback was positive or neutral, and they were willing to say the feedback was based on their own personality. Either way, people with high levels of self-esteem, however, tended to get upset when they received neutral feedback. What, I'm just an average? They were also more likely to deny that the neutral feedback was due to their personality, surely because the person who watched the tape was an idiot. This suggests that self-compassionate people are better able to accept who they are, regardless of the degree of praise they receive from others. Self-esteem, on the other hand, only thrives when the reviews are good and may lead to evasive and counterproductive tactics when there's a possibility of facing unpleasant truths about oneself. Recently, my colleague Bruce Wong and I investigated the benefits of self-compassion versus self-esteem with more than 3,000 people from various walks of life, the largest study to examine this issue. First, we examined the stability of positive feelings these people experience towards themselves over time. These feelings tend to go up and down or yo-yo, or were they relatively constant. We hypothesized that self-esteem would be associated with relatively unstable feelings of self-worth, since self-esteem tends to be diminished whenever things don't turn out as well as desired. On the other hand, because compassion can be extended to oneself in both good times and bad, we expected the feelings of self-worth to remain steadier over time among self-compassionate people. To test this idea, we had participants report on how they were feeling towards themselves at a time. For instance, I feel inferior to others at this moment, or I feel good about myself, doing so 12 different times over a period of 8 months. Next, we calculated the degree to which overall levels of self-compassion or self-esteem predicted stability in self-worth over this period. As expected, self-compassion was clearly associated with steadier, more constant feelings of self-worth than self-esteem. We also found that self-compassion was less likely than self-esteem to be contingent on outside factors like social approval, success in competitions, or feeling attractive. When our sense of self-worth stems from a human being intrinsically worthy of respect rather than being contingent on reaching certain goals, our sense of self-worth is much easily shaken. We also found that in comparison to self-esteem, self-compassion was associated with less social comparison and less need to retaliate for perceived personal insights. It was also linked to less need for cognitive closure, which is speak for the need to be right without question. People who invest in self-worth as feeling superior and infallible tend to get angry and defensive when they status doesn't. People who compassionately accept their imperfection, however, no longer need to engage in such unhealthy behavior to protect their egos. Right? So, an island of calm, the article is getting over. Taken together, this research suggests that self-compassion provides an island of calm. He's saying, the author, and a refuge from the stormy seas of endless positive and negative self-vision, so that we can finally stop asking, am I as good as they are? Am I good enough? By tapping into our inner wellsprings of kindness, acknowledging the shared nature of our imperfect human condition, we can start to feel more secure, accepted, and alive. It does take work to break the self-criticizing habits of lifetime, but at the end of the day, you are only being asked to relax and allow life to be as it is and open your heart to yourself. It's easier than you might think, and it could change your life. Right? These are the things everybody needs to definitely know about the self-compassion, right? Because many people, they may be very good, having all the self-confidence and self-esteem, but they may lack sometimes the self-compassion. But here, self-compassion is equally important, as it can win in so many situations. We never know, right? So, my dear friends and devotees, hope you enjoyed this video, and and definitely I know it's a pathway for less anxiety, less conflict, and more peace of mind. So catch you all with another motivational video. Until then, vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Jagat Guru Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you. Hare Krishna.